There are tons of business podcasts to choose from, but only one has the stamp of approval. Kristen Stampini is South Florida's leading real estate entrepreneur and your trusted source for everything real estate.
I would like to welcome our listeners and thank you for joining us today for an episode of our podcast, The Stamp of Approval. I'm Kristen Stampini, co-founder of the Stampini team with RE/MAX in Boca Raton, Florida. I'm also a certified real estate coach with Craig Proctor and the owner of Global Virtual Real Estate Assistants. I'm a national trainer and public speaker, and my husband Mark and I are also real estate investors. The Stamp of Approval podcast was launched to share and educate other realtors, consumers, and other business owners across North America by sharing value and content to our listeners in each and every episode. I share my experiences, my triumphs, my failures, and my strengths throughout my entire life with the hope of my audience being able to expand their knowledge on everything real estate, business, sales, and mindset oriented. If you like our podcast, all we ask is that you please share it with others. So today I have my buddy, my friend, that's also in my office in Boca Raton at RE/MAX Services, except for I've been there for a few years and he's been there for like 20 years, is Brian Bowles. So Brian started selling real estate in 1985 after spending 3 years in the front office of the Chicago White Sox as an assistant in scouting. From 1985 to 1997, Brian sold real estate in Illinois. And then Brian started his real estate career as a single agent. And still today, 34 years later, he is still the only real estate agent on his team actually selling real estate. So Brian sold over 300 homes just in 94 through 95 alone, and sold 60 homes in a 61-day period all by himself. Okay. He moved to Delray Beach in 1998, so 21 years ago. And his first 2 years in Florida, he sold $50 million in real estate. Wow. That's great, moving to an area that you know nobody. So every year, Brian is ranked in the top 100 RE/MAX agents nationwide and ranked in the top 1/2% of all agents in the United States. So Brian has refurbished properties and resold them, taught investments in real estate, taught people how to invest in real estate. And, also his brother, John Jr. managed the Florida Marlins and is now an executive with Kansas City Royals. So his nephew, Kevin, is also with the Red Sox. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. So what I really wanted to talk about, because you are you do amazing marketing on your farm area. And let me just ask you some questions, first of all. So when you moved from Illinois to Delray Beach, Florida, how did you do that many sales when you first moved here?
Kristen, I was really worried when I took on a new state. I didn't know how I would do, and I just took all my formulas I ever used in Illinois and applied them to Florida. It didn't grow as fast as in like the first week, but I said stick to your basic principles, stick to everything you've ever done that was successful in Illinois, and let's apply it to another state. And it was really hard because I didn't know a street, I didn't know an agent, I didn't have any contacts, so I put my own home for sale and sat in the house every day, an open house for 8 hours a day, and got to know the whole neighborhood.
Wow. Now that is dedicated. I don't see a whole lot of agents doing that today. Do you?
No, I think the agents are getting a little bit lazy. They need to get back to basics and remember that people are driving by and do want to see open houses.
That's right. Absolutely. And so you were grunt prospecting pretty much. I mean, you got out there and you just really worked harder than anybody else.
Yeah. I wanted to meet the people.
Yeah.
You can't meet people in your office, so I wanted to have it like my store was open every day, and I got to know the whole neighborhood, and then others would say, will you sell my home? And I knew how to talk the talk because I had been in real estate, so I wasn't intimidated by what to tell them.
But selling $50 million when you first moved here in the first couple of years, I mean, that's a lot. And especially back in 21 years ago.
Yeah, that was a lot. I think the most I had ever sold was 42 million. So it was a good number, and I've stayed consistently around those 30 to 40 million a year.
So did you? Yeah, and you've done an amazing job. I've watched you from year to year. You're very consistent, especially again being a single agent on your team, and being the one who does all the production and everything else. That's awesome. That's really good. So when did you start farming when you moved to Florida?
Right away. I consider opening your house as farming, but sending out postcards first month. And I've been doing 17 neighborhoods, over 5,500 postcards every year since 98, since I moved here.
Okay. And so when you did the 50 million in your first 2 years here, was that coming from also not just you sitting in your own house every day to do an open house, learning about, the neighborhoods and everything else? Because you didn't know anybody here, right?
I didn't know a soul. So it was just getting to know people, talking to people, learning the neighborhoods, going in the office early, studying the market like it was Wall Street.
Yeah. That's why you've done so well. And then how many of that 50 million you think in the 2 years came from your farming?
I would say at least half.
Really?
Yeah.
So your farming worked pretty quick. Were people doing farming back then?
Not really. People were shocked. Nowadays, I'll get 10 or 12 postcards a month in my mailbox. Back then, there was hardly any farming going on. And now you see it all the time, postcards in my mailbox. Almost like politicians, where you go home and you see another postcard, and there's one girl in my farm area sending out 12 postcards a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 12 times a month.
Yes.
And so you said that you were doing 17 communities, neighborhoods?
17 communities. I expanded it a little bit, north or south or east or west, just to stay. What I wanted, my goal was to, when people would leave one neighborhood, say, I see Brian Bowles' sign in another neighborhood, keep my farm areas close together. I didn't want 30 miles apart. I wanted them all, if you're driving down Federal Highway, which is a big area in Boca Raton or Delray, I wanted them to pull over to another street and say, oh, I see his sign here, and I saw it 10 miles away. So I wanted to keep it consistent.
That's awesome. And then you send 5,500 a month.
5,500 a month, and every quarter my sphere gets postcards too, which is about 1,000 sphere of influence postcards.
Okay, and what is it? What do you think it is when you're farming? Do you think it's consistency, or do you think it's what's in the actual information that you're sending?
I think it's all about consistency. I think if you ask most people, they wouldn't even know what company I work for, or what I've sold. I think they see my solds and for sale, and they say, this guy must be doing something, because I see his postcards every month. They're like clockwork. They're within a couple days every month, so it's almost like they're waiting for my postcard.
And are you sending postcards, or are you sending envelopes, stuff in envelopes?
I send postcards, colored postcards. I used to be the only one who sent black and white, and it was working. And everyone said, you got to change for the times. And I said, well, it seems to be working, but I saw the quality of other people's postcards, and I said, it's time to go to color.
Well, did you do that with your sign?
I did change my signs up a little bit. I have my face on my sign, and people always say, why your face on your sign? I think it's an open invitation. When you see someone in Publix or at a ball game, they say, are you the realtor? And I say, yes. And it's your business card being out in the public.
That's right.
So
that's right. And so are you sending the same thing on the postcards every month?
No, I'm tweaking it to what I just sold and what I just listed. So it's pretty much a yearly postcard. So if I've done 12 sales for that year, we'll keep it for the year rotating. And if we get a new listing, new featured listing, new hot sale, we'll put home of the month. We're tweaking our postcard a little bit, just where something really pops out at you.
So with the 17 different communities, how many different postcards are you sending? Different layouts? 17?
My shell is the same. The shell, for everyone who's out there, is my wording on the front and my design, and then we just change up the homes from the neighborhoods.
Okay.
So we're not really changing the format.
Okay, and who's doing all this for you? Are you doing it yourselves, assistants on your team, or are you having a company do it for you?
So at the end of the month, we prepare our postcards. So we get them to the postcard company within 1 or 2 days of the month ending. And then they're usually out on the streets by the 6th or the 7th of the new month. And they're usually hitting your home between the 7th and 10th day of the month. So I have a girl who's in my office right now designing the 17 postcards, and then we'll send them for proofs, and then they'll be out within a couple days.
So how long does that take a month for you to get it all designed and to get all the information and everything else?
About 4 hours.
Total?
Yeah. Yeah. We got it down to a science. I mean, it's not much tweaking. If I was a new agent, I wouldn't use my format for marketing with 10 or 12 homes. It might be a little too busy with all that information. I might just go with the just listed, just sold and feature one home. I think they're used to my format. The one thing I try to do is stay consistent, and it's worked for me. But if I was a new agent, I would change some things today.
And what would you change?
Well, if I was marketing, I would do just listed, just sold, or anything I did, I probably would, if I was going against the competition today, I would probably send out 3 postcards a month, do more marketing.
Okay.
And farming.
And out of 5,500 that you send out, how many calls do you think that you get actually from the marketing that you're sending out every month?
I would say 5 to 10 calls a month. It's
Wow.
not, yeah.
Well, that's
But
1%, 1 to 2%. That's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I mean, if you get, so we figure our postcards probably cost us $30,000 a year with postage. So if I get 1 deal a month and 12 deals a year, let's say, but we get more than that, it's paying for itself 5 to 10-fold.
Oh yeah, because if you're doing 30,000 a year, that's 12, 20. So that's 2,500 a month.
Right.
Okay, and at 2,500 a month, that's just one is paying for itself 3 or 4 times because
Right.
your average price point's pretty high.
Right.
So you're doing really well with that. And how many sales do you think you get a year just from your farming? Not from repeat, not from past clients, but just from your farming?
I'd say about 20%. I think people always say, "How do you think you made your deal?" And I call it the wheel of sales. Where is it my sign? Is it my open house? Is it my marketing? Is it my websites? Is it my postcards? I think it's a little bit combination of everything. I haven't tracked it. Here's another point. If I was starting today, I would track my money better.
Yeah.
Where the lead is definitely coming from and track it. But I'm old school, so I just do it.
I just remember when I first met you, I think I came to Remax and it's been about 6 years. And I remember when I first met you because I think it's really important, exactly what you're saying. I haven't been in real estate that long, but I think it's really important that you track each of your lead sources, how much money you're spending, how much return on, so everything that we do. And I remember you coming and saying, this is what I said, look at how well you do. I mean, it works for you. Why change it, right? Because you consistently, you bring home 60% that's put in your pocket. You're bringing home, you're doing, close to $1 million or over, a little bit under every single year in commissions. So you're bringing home a nice, plus you have your investments and everything else. But the thing is that why change it, right? Because you're doing something that works for you. But I agree with you for anybody else who's new, really making sure they're tracking the numbers, where it's coming from, how much they're spending, and where they're closings. But you said, just in yourself that you're doing, 5 to 10 calls. Out of 5 to 10 calls, how many of those are you actually getting appointments with?
I would say about 70%. So if there's 10 calls, 7 of them, you try to set up an appointment right away, or I'll drop off my marketing information. And I think a lot of times we don't get back to the basics and write handwritten notes. Thank you for considering Brian Bowles to list your home, and I'll send them a handwritten note. You do the simple things, the things that people like. We're getting involved too much with texting and not face-to-face or personal notes. I think we're losing that personal touch.
Yeah. And so if you go on 7 listing appointments from your postcards, how many of those are you usually taking?
I get 8. No. So I better hit. I'd be disappointed if I didn't get 5 out of 7. I once had an agent tell me, second year in the business, every listing he goes on, he gets. And I said, 100% of the listings you get? And he said, yes. I said, you're not getting enough listing appointments. If you're that good of a listing agent, you need to put yourself out of your comfort zone and not just do family members, because no one hits 100%. There's no way.
That's right. And I agree. I mean, 60, 70%, I mean, it's good for people that you've never met before. I mean, obviously people that have been seeing your face for a long time through farming is going to be a little bit different. And then obviously your sphere and past clients is a totally, that's a totally different number. So of people that you've actually never met before face to face, I mean, those are good numbers.
Great numbers.
Yeah.
Because it's, you got to realize how competitive it is. I mean, even past clients will say, Brian, thanks for coming in. We're interviewing three other agents, and you're shocked. The real estate has changed, where people are calling in 3, 4, 5 agents. Most past clients don't call in other agents, but you're even bumping into where they're saying, Brian, we're calling in other agents to see what they have to say, and you're shocked. Because when I first started in real estate, they would just call you and say, where do we sign? There was no presentation. There was, what do you think it's worth? Where do we sign?
So it's getting more competitive year over year.
Oh, definitely. And with the commission structures and the professional photography and the drones, and you better be on your game.
That's right. And, one of the things is there's right now, I believe that in our MLS, okay, first of all, there's 400 new agents per month coming into just ours, Brian. Right. Okay, that's crazy numbers. Because all you got to do to get a real estate license is you got to go to school for 1 week.
Right.
Okay, to get a real estate license here in Florida. That's what it is. But we have like 50,000 in our MLS. Okay, selling like 90,000 homes. So they're selling less than 2 homes a year. Okay, probably back, in the day it was a lot easier because and this is the other statistic. 55% of all listings in Palm Beach County are sold by a person that does 1 transaction a year. Okay, so you're up against 45% pretty much. And that one transaction a year, a lot of the time is going to be the brother, the sister, the mom, the aunt, the whoever. So now you're up against 45%. And then that's and there's so many agents out there that you're competing against.
Yeah, that part drives me crazy because it's your biggest financial investment, selling your home, and they'll give it to someone just out of real estate school, and you're like, and then you come in and clean up the mess, the errors in the contracts, or the mortgage didn't go through, and you're like, why would you put your biggest investment into someone who just got out of school?
I don't think a lot of people really realize how important it is that to get the exposure, to get the negotiations, to get everything that you need, that they need that experience in those full-time agents to really look out for the best interest to get their home sold the fastest and for top dollar. And I think that a lot of consumers out there don't realize how important it really is to find that agent that is best for them, but that has the experience and that has the proven track record year over year.
Well, I think like watching, I know we were talking about the Miami Heat last night and Dwayne Wade's great shot. He practices that shot at some point in his life. I practiced my negotiations through the years. So when Dwayne Wade's shot was blocked, caught it, had the presence of mind to bank it in, he is If that was a rookie player, he would have just thought the clock's going to run out. I won't even try it. He had the presence of mind to shoot it with like 0.2 of a second and make the game-winning shot. So that was a professional, years of experience. My first year in real estate, I was like, what do I do? What do I say? How do I close this deal? And now you know when someone's negotiating a deal, when to go in for, I call it the kill, go in to make the deal. There's a time where you better put it together right away or be ready to put it together because you may never get another chance. It may not sell for 6 months. Some listings you only get that one shot to sell it, and you better put it together.
That's right. And those are all great points, because one of the things is that, when we get out of real estate school, and I remember when I got out of real estate school, I'd been a professional before, but when I had gotten out of real estate school, they kind of just let you go out there and you don't even have any clue to what you're doing. And everything I learned in real estate school really didn't pertain to anything I was doing in the day-to-day real estate. So you have to learn so much, and to be really, just like what you were talking about. I mean, Dwayne Wade and how many times he makes that shot, or how many times he practices that shot, is the same thing. We have to go out there and we have to educate and we have to try it and we have to learn it. And like you said, I mean, you learned how to negotiate again and again, and you practice. Same with listings, how to do it, how to market it, how to get it best exposure. I mean, and same with, your farming and everything else that you do. You have to do it over and over and over and over and over again in practice, right?
Yeah, I think the number one key to real estate is, and Kristen and I were talking about this last week in the office, how can you stay motivated after 30 years? I just use the same discipline I use every day and do the same things. Being in pro sports, I watch the great players. They work on their craft every day, and they work on the same thing over and over and over. And don't think that Michael Jordan didn't take 1,000 shots a day. A friend of mine told me a story once. During the playoffs, he would sleep in the locker room and work on his game. When Dwayne Wade has a bad game, he'll call his trainer and say, open the gym at 2 a.m. So you're constantly keeping up your principles and staying to what's true. When you go to the gym, when you work out hard and when you dogged it. And so it's like real estate. You are your own boss. You are the person who has to look in the mirror and say, did I try today or did I dog it? And I've seen a lot of times where people make a big deal for $2 million and say, I can just coast now off that commission, and the deal falls through. So what are you going to do next? I go into each day as if today's a new day. What deal am I going to make today? Or what contact may I make today? What's going to grow my business down the road?
Yep. So, okay, perfect. Now, I just want you to give 3 tips to our listeners out there of how you've been successful with farming, and what you would give them to do, agents. What would you give them to do if they wanted to start farming? What are the important things to do?
First thing I would do when I start farming is get on the MLS, make sure you're farming an area where there are homes being sold. You don't want to farm an area where there's only 2 closings a year. You want to make sure there's like 20, 30, 40, 50 deals a year. The other thing is, if someone is doing 70, 80, 90% of a farm area, you might not want to go after that area because he's kind of cornered the area, or she. So I look at where there is a farm area that there's 10 agents maybe doing 5 deals each, and I think there's an opportunity there because no one has cornered a certain market. There's an area in Florida where there's a guy who has about 80% of the market, and he would be tough to break in against. So you want to see, 1, are there deals being made in the area? 2, are there at least 400 to 500 homes or more? And 3, is the market share spread out? If one person is doing 70 to 80%, it's going to be tough for you to beat that guy.
Okay,
or
and then
woman.
And you think consistency is important?
Consistency in everything. Returning phone calls, being available, returning texts, farming and cold calling. what I mean by cold calling is returning those calls on, people called you at night on your sign and just following up. Like today, a guy called me on my sign, and I just put together the deal 5 minutes before I walked in this room because I called him, showed it to him right away, and he bought it. And I had never showed him any other house, and it was a double where I had buyer and seller.
Double-sided. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, Brian. Wow. Thanks for your expertise today. Brian Bowles, Boca Raton, Florida, RE/MAX Services with me. Awesome to have you. Thank you, customers, or thank you, listeners out there, and have an awesome day. Bye.
Thank you so much, Stamp of Approval.